All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Friday. It is September 20th, and we are just about 24 hours away from the number one team in the country kicking off against the UL Monroe. What are they?
Warhawks, I believe.
The Warhawks? Shows everybody how well we did our homework. The Warhawks of UL Monroe, led by
I know my mascots.
Booty. And so it ought to be a fun game, and it is going to be a night game. The crowd should be loud and revved up, ready to go, tailgating all day long as they get ready to take on the Warhawks. For the first time since 2008, the Texas Longhorns will take the field as the number one team in the country, Jake. That's something to celebrate, something to be excited about.
Yeah. I think a lot of people's first excitement point is going to be Arch Manning, but for me, it is exciting. Just we're going to get to see that number one next to Texas. And we all agree that's the goal for the end of the season. That's much more important than right now. But like we said earlier in the week, as fans, you got to enjoy it a little bit. You got to embrace it. This is going to be the first time in a long time we've seen that number next to the Longhorn logo. And might have to take a little screen grab of it from the television when we see it. But despite the fact that we're coming off a little bit of a grim game, losing Quinn Ewers, having several guys kind of get a little banged up with bumps and bruises, there's a very high level of excitement for being a UL Monroe this week, I think, with Arch Manning being the likely starter. Sark hasn't named him as of recording, but I think we all think he's going to start. So I'd say more excitement than normal for really the opponent that it is.
Yeah, and UL Monroe comes in undefeated, Jake, and probably a better team than they were maybe thought of going into the season. And they are led by Oklahoma Sooner transfer, General Booty. The kid was a highly talented high school football player coming into college, transferred, and that's who's leading the Warhawks this week. And so and this season, and as fun as it is to say his name over and over and over and over again, Jake, what are your thoughts on the General Booty led Warhawks of UL Monroe?
Well, they're not asking General Booty to do very much. We're going to use his full name the whole episode, folks. Just strap in and deal with it.
We're in for a long ride, ladies and gentlemen. We never said this was a mature podcast.
No, this is, if you're here for mature talk about football, you've come to the wrong place. But
still give us a like and a subscribe.
The funny thing is you'd expect an Oklahoma transfer quarterback to be kind of the leader of the team and really the best player on the team. And he has been very efficient. He just hasn't been asked to do very much. I don't think he's attempted more than 15 or 16 passes in a game so far. He's done well, but they're only averaging 110 passing yards a game. They are a run first football team. And that's kind of when I was diving into it, because I was kind of looking forward to seeing, what they did against UAB, because UAB didn't look bad against Arkansas. Monroe handled them. But I don't think their style of play is going to be a very friendly matchup for them this weekend, to kind of foreshadow what we're going to talk about as the episode goes on.
Well, the thing is the Texas Longhorns have played teams that have been run first almost all season, with the exception of maybe Colorado State. But Michigan wanted to run the football, establish the ground game, and they didn't really have a passing game to fall back on, and they became very one-dimensional. UTSA, not a very pass-heavy team, wanted to try to establish the run. Really, the only thing they could do effectively was run the football. They had, a 53-yard touchdown run in that game as their lone score against Texas, and it might be the same recipe for disaster for the UL Monroe Warhawks led by General Booty. And so, they are coming in averaging over 200 yards a game. They're 31st in the country in running the ball. So it is something to be said, and it's not something to be taken lightly. However, I did think what Sark said in his press conference earlier this week, I believe it was Monday, had mentioned that this team is pretty efficient when running play action. And I think that's probably the majority of General Booty's passing attempts coming out of play action, something you got to kind of be aware of.
Yeah, I mean, if you're ULM, your goal is that the holes you've seen in only really a handful of plays from the Texas defense when it's been in run defense shows up consistently in this game, and that you're able to run for 4 to 5 yards a pop and then get General Booty going on the play action, getting on the move, and being able to have a little space that play action sets up. So the key for the Longhorns in this game is just going to be, it's going to be very similar to the Michigan game. Funny enough, they're just not going against the same caliber of opponent, obviously, but just in the fact of if they get ULM into passing down situations, whether it be second and long, third and long, I think the Longhorns are just going to do what they should do in this game and dominate and be able to put it away rather early.
Yeah, the recipe for success in this game will basically be what Texas's recipe has been all season long for the first 3 games of the season. Essentially, I mean, it's get this team into a passing down on a second and long, third and long situation behind the chains, behind of where they want to be in their offense when it comes to running the football. Now, if UL Monroe is living on first down, getting 4, 5, 6 yards of carry on first down, you're actually setting them up for success. That's where they want to be. They can then run it on second down, maybe even try it on third down. Now, I don't know if that'll work all game. Again, Texas really shouldn't feel threatened at any point in this game. It should never feel as though UL Monroe has taken control at any single point in this game as the number 1 team in the country. However, that is going to be the recipe for UL Monroe's success, is to continue to try to stay ahead of the chains on first down, maybe even second down, and making third and even fourth down within a 3 to 2 yard, go for go situation.
Yeah. And it is kind of funny because it feels like the Longhorns' opponent, because even Colorado State ran it much more than they passed it in that game. And so it's kind of funny to be sitting here and we were talking before the show. I'm kind of ready to get into some of these SEC games where the scouting is going to be a little different, because right now it's just been very simple of, other than the Michigan game and all the games, it's been Texas is the superior team. The other team likes to run the ball first. It's probably not going to work out well for them. And so far, it has not worked out well for any of them. And so it's hard to imagine that going differently this week. It may sound repetitive, but the style of opponent's been a little bit repetitive. And so I'm ready to see this Longhorn team go against a more dynamic passing offense, because I really want to see what that looks like for the defense, because I don't think the secondary has been tested whatsoever so far this year.
And that leads me to my question to you, Jay. Could this defense be a mirage? Could it be something that is, they look really good through the first 4 weeks of the season, maybe even the first 5 weeks of the season going into Mississippi State? At what point do you think that this team is actually going to be challenged? And then when that time comes, do you think that they will be up to the challenge? Or is this all kind of a figment of our imagination that they're one of the nation's best passing defenses and one of the best defenses overall?
Well, I have good news. We're going to know in 4 weeks, because in 4 weeks, they'll have played Oklahoma and Georgia. And at that point, we're going to have a pretty good idea, because we'll see this weekend if Oklahoma looks improved on offense. I would suspect that they're going to, having some of that talent come back. And so that's when I'll be sold on this defense. I will say, I don't think the secondary is going to be worse than last year. I'm not saying that. And the secondary wasn't awful last year. They just, unfortunately, they got torn apart in the final game that we saw them. So that's kind of the lasting impression. But they did have a lot of good games last year. And I think this secondary will end up looking much better than last year's, but I don't expect them to just be only giving up, at max 10 points in a game for the rest of the season. I do think in OU, they could be challenged very much with how the momentum swings work in that game. I think Georgia is going to figure it out offensively and be ready to go by the time they come to Austin. And then later in the season, with even a Vanderbilt, they're passing on. I know they just lost to Georgia State, but they have a very good quarterback, I think, to say the least. And then obviously a Texas A&M with whoever they go at quarterback, that'll be a good test. So the tests are coming. I'm eager to see this defense be tested because I think they're gonna live up to what we're hoping for them to be. But there is the chance that what we're seeing might be hyping us up a little too much for what they'll end up being.
So here's kind of where I see, just looking eye test wise and just watching this defense fly around. They are fast and they're physical. And I think that's something that translates each and every single week. Your speed and your strength and your power translates no matter who you're playing against. And Texas looks like the faster, stronger team through 3 weeks of whoever they've played against. And it will be 4 weeks. It just will be. And so I think that's kind of what I'm measuring it is the intensity that we watch this defense fly around sideline to sideline, gang tackling, getting there at the point of attack. As soon as the ball is in the receiver's hands, 2-3 defenders are already on top of them. The amount of pressure that is applied to the pass rush from the edges and the run stopping and up the middle with Vernon Broughton and those guys at the linebacker position. And just the intensity you feel from this defense, I feel is more than what Texas has brought defensively, really even up to this point in PK's tenure and Sark's tenure, even going obviously back to Herman and Strong. Those were never good defenses, but especially with this regime that we currently have, I've not seen a defensive unit play with the speed and strength and power and intensity that we've seen on a week in and week out basis.
Part of that is the depth as well. This is a much deeper defense than last year. They may not have quite the top end as far as defensive tackles go, but the edge room is better. I think the defensive tackle room is still better than most colleges. The secondary to me is being able to have the luxury to move Barron out to corner and then have Muhammad on the other side. I think there's a chance, we talk about, could it be a mirage? On the flip side, is there a chance that the Longhorns could have the best starting corner duo in all of the SEC, which essentially means close to or the best in the country? And I think there's at least a chance of that because I have no doubt in my mind Muhammad is at least a top 10. I'd have to do more research, but I feel comfortable saying a top 10 corner in college football. And Jahdae Barron is quickly looking like he's improving his draft stock, and that's the reason why he came back. But he's showing a lot of diversity at corner, already has a pick on the season. I think on the flip side, there's a chance this could be the best cornerback duo in all of the country.
Yeah, I like that you've kind of taken that turn to it. That is something, and even you put a Holmes in the nickel, or you've got these guys that are stepping in and playing, and you even look at the safeties, and Mukumbo the dude has been playing out of his mind, and then Michael Taft from the safety spot, and Derek Williams. These guys have been playing very well. And now, yes, I know you were talking specifically on the corners, but the secondary as an entire unit is probably the best secondary Texas has had, and I'm going to say it since 2005, since we had the Griffins back there, and the Nathan Vashers, and I just don't remember a better secondary unit, whether that be safeties and corners combined, since the national championship team.
Yeah, maybe a Quandre Diggs year. There were a couple years where the defense was pretty good and the offense was miserable. I think that was primarily under Charlie Strong, but they weren't near as big and as fast as this defense is.
It was. I know Earl Thomas was with Colt McCoy. Who were some of the corners with Earl Thomas? I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know, looking at the 2008, 2009 range, those teams would probably compete for maybe an earlier time spot. in terms of talent. But my point being is that we have a very good secondary, and I think it helps a lot with the pass rush that we've seen improve. Again, going back to playing complementary football and putting it all together, good coverage on the outside, forcing the quarterback to hold on to the ball a little bit longer. Your defensive ends, whether that be Colin Simmons, Trey Moore, Anthony Hill, whoever is rushing the passer, collapsing, pressuring the quarterback because he has to hold it for a beat longer than he normally would, making it uncomfortable for him. That's playing complementary football. And Texas hasn't been able, we haven't seen that from a Texas defense put it together that often and this aggressively and this quickly in a very long time. And I think that's what I'm excited about. So I'm not too worried about the defense being a mirage. I do think they will get tested at some point. I think both can be true. I don't think that they've been tested, but I also don't think that it's false pretense to assume that this team or this defense just isn't going to live up to whatever expectations we've set for them through 3 weeks.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's going to be a game this year where the offense just has to go win it. But that's kind of the luxury with this Texas team right now is their offense can go out and just win a game. I'm sure this offense can have a game where if they got to score 50 points, they can and will. Now, maybe not against Georgia, but still, I'm sure there's going to be a game. Maybe it's a Vanderbilt. Maybe it's one of these games we're not thinking about where a good quarterback that they just come out, think they're going to win, and get kind of beat up early by them. So this defense will be tested. And at this point, it's just a waiting game. It's kind of unfortunate Mississippi State is that first SEC game. I almost wish Georgia was that game. Not now with the injuries. It's better that Quinn gets the rest longer. But as far as just if Quinn was healthy, perfect world, they'd be playing Georgia next week instead of Mississippi State, because then we could get that test right away.
Or even like an LSU, like give us a middle of the road SEC team. LSU doesn't look great. They're probably going to finish middle of the pack. They're not going to be above an Ole Miss or a Tennessee, I don't believe. But, something that's a little bit more exciting than a Mississippi State. I'm kind of with you, Jake. I kind of wish the inaugural SEC game was something a little bit more exciting than Mississippi State. But you did mention the offense, Jake. What's our expectations? It looks like Arch is going to be starting. Let's just assume and say Arch Manning will make his first start against UL Monroe and will be going head to head or ass to ass with General Booty, however you want to mention it. But what are our expectations? What are your predictions? What are you hoping to see from Sark and the offense and the game plan and the scheme with the running back situation, the way the running back situation looks right now as well?
Yeah, and this is something we've kind of talked about a little bit this week, but Sark's been very creative in how he's kind of given the running back room some room to breathe by not giving them as many carries. Even when Jadon Blue was playing, he was kind of limiting the amount of carries that he's getting. He wasn't doing as many just traditional line up and run it. There's been a lot of passes on early downs. There's been handoffs to receivers, a lot of quick passing game. And that's something that I think we're going to see a lot of in this game. I wouldn't be surprised if the opening script is kind of similar to UTSA in the fact that there'll be a lot of passes, but different in the standpoint of, I think it's just going to be quick passes, get the ball out to your playmakers, get that quick passing game going to get the offense in a rhythm, get Arch going early, get the crowd going early, then start to run the football, then start to take some of those deep shots. And that's where I think we're going to see some connection with Ryan Wingo. I think Ryan Wingo could have a big game. He seems to have a really good connection with Arch Manning so far, going back to spring football. And so that's kind of my expectation. I think they're not going to do anything that fancy. They're not going to do anything that different from UTSA other than just maybe get the ball out of Arch's hand quick early, get him in rhythm, and then let him start to get on the move and kind of do some of those things we've seen him do in the short amount of time that we've got to watch him play football.
Something that I love what Sark did against UTSA early in that game. And we mentioned it before, that the start to that game, as much as Texas fans or whoever wants to somewhat kind of complain about that game, that opening drive was a beautiful, just like 10-play scoring touchdown drive. And it just was everything you want the Texas offense to look like on a regular basis. And something that you were getting to, you never said the term. And I was like, get there. But it was, I think Sark uses the passing game as an extension of the running game by getting it out in space, just a quick screen pass, get it out to the sideline to sideline. And from Quinn to Arch has the arm strength to be able to do that and make it a quick draw, quick short passing game, get your guys in space and use that passing game kind of as an extension to the running game to kind of complement the running backs, maybe back off and spread out the linebackers a little bit more. That creates a little bit more space inside to where those guys like a Trey Wisner and a Jadon Blue can kind of do some damage inside. Now, you were talking about the running back position a little bit off air. That's something you're really excited about. We are huge supporters. We love Coach Choice. Something that I thought was very interesting in Sark's presser earlier this week was saying these runners don't necessarily know how to run in open space yet. They just kind of put their head down and they just go through a guy and they pick up a couple extra yardage. He's really looking forward to getting to the point of all of these guys because Jaden Blue, this is the first time he's been able to start. Trey Wisner, first time he's been able to get carries. Jarrett Gibson probably wasn't even expected to get carries. I mean, the guy was playing high school football last year. So not knowing really how to play in open space is not something I ever really thought of could be a technical problem. But he said Coach Choice is working on them, not really looking for contact, but saying, hey, you can make a guy miss in the open space and continue to run and get more yardage that way. You know, it's such an easy concept in our head to think about, but there's an art to it. And these runners, it's amazing to think that these runners haven't really perfected or even gotten to that point in their college careers yet, and they're already this good.
Yeah, and I think that's really directed towards Wisner and Gibson. I do think Blue is electric in space.
Sure.
We remember the Michigan juke. The problem is they haven't really been able to give him much run because he got hurt, and then he's been very limited because you're already limited at the running back position. But you can see it with Wisner, right? I know Wisner can be electric in open space, but he does tend to just kind of get his head down and get downfield, which I do love because it maximizes yardage on plays where the blocking isn't perfect. But at the same time, sometimes if you're just a little bit more patient and you wait for that hole to open up and you give that offensive line a second to get to their blocking assignments, that's when you can pop off for the 67-yard touchdown run. That's where you can get the 20, 30, 40-yard explosives. And that is one thing that's kind of been missing when they have done the run game to the running backs. I think the longest rush of the season, I believe it would be Wingo with that 55-yarder against Michigan. And so maybe that's something we look for in this Monroe game is, can they get some explosive in the run games with the running backs? Or do we even see the running backs get enough run to do that? Because I do think that's been part of the issue is they just haven't gotten much run because he's trying to keep the running backs healthy for when they get into these bigger SEC games as the year goes on.
Yeah, this was something that you and I had talked about is the wide receiver position for Texas is a very unique, very deep position as a whole. I think Arch Manning has had a rapport with two guys, and you mentioned one of them already, Ryan Wingo. The other one, I think Jonte Cook is going to thrive with Arch Manning. I'm not saying Matthew Golden and Isaiah Bond aren't going to also do their damage, but I think Jonte Cook is also set up to have a very good game. DeAndre Moore is someone who has stepped up and kind of been fourth, fifth option between. I think right now your solid first three are Bond, Golden, and Wingo. I think that's kind of your top three. And then also you can throw Gunnar Helm in there. I'm talking primarily wide receivers as pass catchers. Obviously Gunnar Helm will be in there. But Jonte Cook and DeAndre Moore right there. And then a guy that we thought was going to be more involved in the offense, more so maybe special teams now, Silas Bolden. Do we expect something from Silas Bolden, maybe on offense, maybe not, but at least special teams? Is he primed for a big return, maybe, in the punt game or something?
I think this has got to be the game for him where he does something to get his confidence going. Because I don't know if it's a confidence issue or what it is, but when he gets the ball, he's just looked frantic in this offense, like he's trying to force something to come open rather than just getting the yardage and then seeing if he can make it an explosive from there. There's been too many times where he gets the ball and he just kind of dances around. It doesn't end up getting any yardage. He's had a muff punt. He's a guy that the coaching staff was excited about, but the wide receiver position, he's just almost too small when you have other guys who are just as fast, if not faster, but are also much larger human beings
Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
more of a complete wide receiver. And that's kind of been the issue for Bolden. And uh, I feel like if he doesn't get an explosive play in this game, we're going to see his usage start to go down and further down by the game, because if he can't make big plays happen against UTSA, against UL Monroe, what makes you confident to throw him out there when you could put Ryan Wingo out there, when you could put Jonte Cook, when you could put DeAndre Moore, and so on, against a Georgia, against an OU, against an A&M? This is his, in my opinion, his last chance, as far as especially on the offensive side of the ball, to make something happen and prove that he should get some snaps, because it's great if you look awesome in practice, but if you don't do it ever on Saturday, you're going to get passed up, especially on a team that is this talented.
All right, Jake, let's go ahead and get into some predictions for the game. Now, we've got about 4 minutes remaining. Let's go ahead and kind of do a couple of predictions. Why not? Who do you think is the player of the game for the offense?
I am going to go with Ryan Wingo. I think he has been I think he's the leading wide receiver currently. He has, I believe, the longest run of the year. I might be wrong on these, but I'm pretty sure those are right. I didn't look them up. This is off the top of the head. But
That makes sense.
I
No,
think
that's false. Arch Manning's 67-yard touchdown run is now the longest touchdown. It's now the longest
I was
run of the
thinking
season.
about running backs. I was thinking about running
Yeah,
backs and wide receivers. I wasn't
yeah.
thinking about quarterbacks. So Arch Manning has the longest run, but
And the fastest
uh
run, apparently, because he apparently was faster than Tyreek Hill was all last season.
that's just crazy, right? That was an unbelievable stat. But
When they came out with that, I thought it was a troll. I didn't believe. I had to double check and triple check like the source of it. I was like, that's not true.
yeah, but it is harder for those NFL players to get an open space. But Tyreek Hill is a guy you see run an open space. So
But he also is already
regardless,
he's already so fast that he doesn't necessarily have to run full speed whenever he is in open space.
yeah,
He's typically jogging.
yeah, we're not saying Arch would beat Tyreek Hill in a sprint, but it is crazy that he even got to that level of speed, because
Right.
you've seen Tyreek Hill run fast on the football field last year, and Arch was factually faster than at any point that we saw Hill. So that's pretty impressive. But
Yeah.
I
So
do
Ryan
like
Wingo.
yeah, I like Ryan Wingo to have a huge game. I think he could have 150 plus yards receiving and maybe a long rush, and I'm going to go with 2 touchdowns.
I think Arch Manning, man. I'm gonna take the low hanging fruit here. This one is. I know everyone's gonna say that, but I'm too excited to watch him play, man. I'm giddy. It's like Christmas morning, dude. And as much as I love Quinn, and Quinn is the guy, I'm not making a QB controversy out of this, but I think Arch Manning's going to come out. I think he's going to play very, very well. I think he's going to play under control. In fact, I think with a full week of prep, we're going to see a better version of Arch Manning than we saw against UTSA. And the guy had 5 total touchdowns, last week. So I think we're going to see a very fun, energetic team. And Arch Manning who's ready to play. And I'm going to go ahead and say he's going to have 3 passing touchdowns and 2 rushing touchdowns to match his 5 touchdown total from a week ago. So let's go ahead, move to the defense side of the ball. Any standouts on the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, give me Anthony Hill. I'm going to take the low hanging fruit on this one. He was probably the player of the game in UTSA. He led the team in tackles. He seemed, the only big run play was a Benda bust. And Benda's looked good, but he's just had 2 busts that were obvious this year. So he's getting some heat this week. I think he'll have a big game, but give me Anthony Hill. I think he's going to get a sack. I think he's probably going to let's go with 4 tackles for loss in this game. And I look for him to just have kind of a coming out party right before the SEC, because he's been really good this year, but we haven't seen that explosive, 3-yard loss. He just flies through the hole, 5 times in one game. And I think this could be a game where that happens and sets up for him to start to get his draft status, for the coming year, where they're going to start talking about him as the top linebacker to go off the board.
I think that I really wanted to go like a Malik Muhammad. I wanted to go someone in the secondary, but I don't think that the style that UL Monroe plays is going to benefit any of the secondary guys. So I've changed my tune. I'm going to say Alfred Collins is going to be a standout performer in this game. In fact, I even think he's going to manage a sack, and it'll just be because he's blowing up the line and he gets through on a play action and he's just there in the quarterback's lap during the play action. I mean, it's just going to get nasty. And so I think Alfred Collins could be set up to have a huge game this game, whether that be tackles for loss, just tackles at the line of scrimmage, first contact, really just plugging up holes and forcing the runners to go in another direction and just, clogging those gaps, if you will. Give me Alfred Collins as a standout. Final score predictions, Jake.
I'm going to stay kind of consistent with what they've showed us. They're probably not going to, I tried to predict them to go in the 60s last week. Maybe if Quinn doesn't go down, it happens, because, we don't see that kind of sloppy period of play, but I think they're going to win. I'm going to go in between the Colorado State and UTSA game. I think they're going to win 55-3 in this game.
You picked a perfect little average there. I'm going to go with Texas 59, UL Monroe, led by General Booty one last time, 0. They're going to put up a goose egg. So I think another shutout for the Texas Longhorns. I think they were kind of upset about the long run from UTSA. I think they feel like they should have had 2 shutouts on the season. They're going to make it 2 on Saturday.
Let's make this the first game where it's truly 60 minutes of hell. We haven't seen it yet. We haven't seen a 60-minute performance, and that would be probably the biggest concern. Is I want to see this team play for a full 60 minutes regardless of opponent and dominate and not give up anything. And Monroe is a team that they should be able to do that against if they stay focused on the details throughout the entire game.
Well, Jake, that is going to do it for All In Horns on this Friday edition of your daily fix of Texas Longhorn. Hey, quick shout out. The girls volleyball beat Baylor a couple nights ago and are now in the winning column yet again, but they did sweep the Lady Bears 3-0. So just a quick shout out to end our show. But for all things Horns, right here on YouTube and where all podcasts can be here, like, share, subscribe. Remember, we're trying to get to 200 subscribers before that Mississippi State game. Join us, help us get there. And as always, we love your support, and hook 'em.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.